This is Craig. We're back with Goodson Guitars here in Odessa, Texas, and it's been a while since I've been able to work on this. I've been kind of busy with other things, but at this point where we're at is everything's been cleaned up as good as it's going to clean up. A lot of this is stained. The wood's been stained. We got a cleat in here for this crack. We got all of this stuff done. It's going to sound okay. It's got a lively top on it. The back, we got some cleats going on here, and we've got all the braces glued back in. So now we're at a point where we're going to get the back on the guitar, but they didn't notch the kerfing when they put the back on, and so it caused some ripples and things. And so what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to mark where these braces are, and I'm going to notch the kerfing so this top will sit down a little better. And then once the back is glued back on, then really all we have left to do, other than the arduous task of redoing this purfling, which that's a thing in and of itself, is the neck is gonna have to be reattached, and then we got to make a bridge. I'm gonna get the material that I bought for it. Anyway, we got to make a bridge, and then we got to do a fretboard, and this is the stuff. This is the wood that I bought to do that. So we'll end up milling this down to the proper thickness and cutting it to size, and then we'll figure out the scale and mark the frets. I think this wood will look real nice on here, and we can use the neck to mark that out. And then this is a material I'm going to end up using for the bridge, and it's going to sit, you know, it's not going to be that big obviously, but this is what I'm going to use. And we'll get this all milled down and figure out the neck angle and all of that. But right now we're just going to notch the back and get the back glued on. So how I'm going to do that is once I get everything lined up how I want it to go, I'm just going to get in here and put some marks on the kerfing that show where those braces are. There's one right there, there's one here, one sticking out there, and the top has moved a little bit and the sides have moved a little bit, but once we start putting the spool clamps on, and we can get our hand in here and push things around and get it all lined back up. But that's why I want to get the back on here as soon as possible, because things are starting to move. So let me get that going, and right now I got to find a pencil, so y'all sit tight and easy. So the first one I can see, and it's going to be right here. And so what I'm going to do is make sure everything is lining up where I want it to go, and then we're going to do this one, and then we'll clamp it in here to we'll clamp it here and here to mark the rest of them so it doesn't move on me. But that's a pretty good spot. Everything's kind of lining up right there, and like I said, this thing's gonna be that's one of the lucky things about doing a complete back off is, you know, things are gonna move and you can adjust for it down the line. And then I know I'm gonna have to retrim some of this stuff when I put the binding on, so that's gonna help out quite a bit too. So it's not gonna take a whole lot because these they're really not that thick over in there, so I'm probably gonna just do it with a file. All right, so I don't know how well you can see that, but I put in a notch right here so that can sit down inside there. And then there's another one right, I'm not even close, where's it at? There it is. So there's another one right there. So now those two this thing doesn't want to move in here anymore. I'm trying to shift it around and the whole instrument's moving because that brace is now locked in. And so that's kind of what I was wanting to do. So let me clamp that, mark the other ones, and then we'll come back and probably get some glue going on this thing. Okay, so we got that squared away. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply glue, and then I'm going to use Irwin clamps on the end for the neck block and the tail block, and that will raise it up, and then that will allow me to put the spool clamps around, and then I can work it. I'm also going to well, I was saying about trying to flip it over, but the more I look at it, it's lining up pretty good, so we're just gonna go with it and go for it and see what shakes loose. This is kind of a weird spot because you want to try to get enough glue on here that it's gonna hold, but you don't want to get so much that you end up with a crazy amount of squeeze out, because trying to get in there and clean it up is gonna be really difficult. And I know probably on video this doesn't look like it's very clean, but it is. Just there's a lot of water damage and a lot of stains on this, so it is clean, and so we're going to go with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this sponge and I'm going to lightly go around the edge and get this spread out good. And what this also does is it gives me a good line of glue, but it also kind of takes up any excess that might run out on the inside of the guitar. And then also I can, if necessary, recruit my daughter to stick her little arm in there and clean up any squeeze out that's on there. Alright, here we go. So again, notching it allows the top to go back into to sit nice and tight on the kerfing all the way around, and it also gives me registration points so it doesn't want to start creeping on me. I actually want to put these on this way, that will raise it up more. So this is clamping straight onto the tail block, and then this one is going to do the same, and then I will do the same on the neck block after I get rid of this big blobby mess of glue right there. Hoping that y'all can see, because what I'm doing now is I'm just making sure that that lip lines up right there with the end of the neck block, and then I will fan this out. And then the same thing there, we're good. So now we have even pressure on those, and then that will allow it to sit like that while I go around and put these on here. And the last guitar that I did was a full body, so I'm gonna have to do a lot of spinning. There's a spot right there where I can tell I'm gonna have to push in on it as I tighten it up. and try to get all of this to line up as good as possible. That way when I go back in and reroute the channel for that binding, I'm not cutting into the purfling too much. I'm going to keep going with this. This is not something very exciting to watch. So we're just going to get these on here and I will come back to you when it's done. Alright, so we got that taken care of. So now I'm going to turn my attention to the fingerboard. This board is the one that came with the instrument when I got it. And at its thickest point, it's 13/64. So 7/32. I will probably take this thing down, because right there it's 3/16. And since I'm making a new bridge, I can kind of go with this however I want. So what I'm probably going to do is take this down to 3/16 of an inch, and then put the radius on it, get it cut to shape, but it's too thick as it is now, so I'm gonna have to do some milling on here, and I think I'm just gonna do it in the thickness sander instead of trying to run this thing through the bandsaw, because it feels like it might be a little brittle. So that's the next step, is to get this thing down to a good size, and then we'll put the radius on it. But it doesn't have to come down a whole lot, and just just a smidge. And then I need to figure out what the radius on this thing was, and somewhere in amongst all this stuff I have these radius gauges, and well, looks like it might be a 10 or a 12. So not seeing any light through there. That's a 10. So that's what I'm gonna go with, is a 10. So what I'm going to do is a trick that I saw on Crimson guitars. He calls it the masking tape and super glue trick, and that's what I call it, and it works really cool. The only thing is you got to make sure that your bench, the area that you're working on, is flat, because I've got a dip right in here. I need to rebuild this top. Basically what you do is you put down tape, and then what I'm going to do is trim off the excess right here. Take some super glue Matter of fact, we're gonna trim off a little bit extra right there. And there. So I'm gonna flip this over where it's lined up, and then I'm gonna put a little bit of glue like so, and then I'm gonna put a little accelerator here and here, and flip it over. And now it's on the bench and it's not gonna move. And so I can get my radius block out. So here we go. And this is a 10-degree radius block with some 80 grit paper on it. Look at it. I'm going to stop the camera. I'm going to do this and then I will come back to you. One of the tricks you can do is have these white pencils. Scribble you a little line. Go back and forth. And you're just going to keep going down until all of that's gone. And then that'll tell you that you have your radius all the way down the board. And then you do the same thing going to 120, 220, 320, and you keep going up until you reach the grit that you want to go with. So yeah, it's probably going to take me about, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes to get this part done and then go through the grits. So I'll come back to you. All right, welcome back to the shop. It's been a few days since I've worked on this instrument, so we'll get the camera set up. And the last time we did anything, it's we got the bag back on and I'm stabilizing some of this purfling, and then the last thing I'm gonna do is go in and repair all of this. So right now what we're gonna work on is getting the neck squared away, and what was wrong with the neck when it came in was the part of the heel had broken off, and I'm gonna have to add some more to it to get it to the right distance, because our problem we have is when we put the neck down into the slot, you can see here there's not enough of it, so I need to add some to it. And so I'm gonna take this piece of mahogany that I have, and we're going to basically add that to that and then trim out what we don't need. So right now what I'm going to do is with holding this up here, I'm going to make some marks about right there. And so the first thing I'm going to do is cut this down to that size. So I'm going to step over here on the bandsaw off camera and take care of that real quick. So now we've got it the thickness that we need, and so the next thing I want to do is put me a mark, and this is all going to be eyeballed because I'll trim it down better. So I'm going to put a mark right here, and then I'm going to cut that off, and then we're going to glue this on. And then what that will allow me to do is reshape the rest of the heel, and then I can go in and reshape the rest of the dovetail that's missing. That way it fits down in there good and tight. So let me cut that off and we'll get it glued on. So the next step is that it didn't break off square. And so I ran this through the bandsaw and cut it off. and now we're gonna glue this, but I want these two surfaces flat, and so we're gonna go over here to the sander and go ahead and get these two surfaces a little bit flatter before we put the glue on there and clamp it. So everybody hold on to your drink. Here we go. Yep, and I hit everything there was to hit. So now you can see those two surfaces are perfectly flat against each other, and when I glue this up, it should look pretty good. Now, one of the things I may run into is trying to match this color, but that's what happens when you have to rebuild something, especially when you got to add parts. So let's go back to the bench. And this is a pretty straightforward process. We're going to take some regular wood glue. Put that on there. Yeah, y'all can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to put that piece on there like so. And I'm going to let it sit for a second and let it bite. That way it doesn't want to creep as much. I'm just holding it in place, making sure that it's overlapping everywhere I want it to overlap so I can trim it up. And then I will take this clamp, and then I'm going to put light pressure at first. And then I'm going to slowly add pressure to it. And I don't have any creep. And so now that piece is glued on there, and it will get trimmed up and look awesome. So I think at this point, the next few steps are going to be to take the binding off of the top, and then take the binding out of the sound hole. Then we'll get the neck shaped up. We also got to make the bridge. I know in the last video we talked about the fingerboard and the bridge material, and so we're gonna have to look at those. And depending on what I got to do at this neck angle to get the action right, I may have to build a wedge to go underneath here. But that's just one of those things that we're gonna have to work on as we go. So I'm gonna call it good for this section of videos, and I'm gonna get this edited and uploaded. And next time I may take all that binding off camera, and then we'll talk about how we're gonna repair all of that purfling, and then we'll talk about getting the neck finished up. And then once the longest part's gonna be repairing that purfling, and once that's done, the rest of it's going to go pretty quick. So we should be maybe one video or two, and then we got to do a finish on it to protect it. So that's where we're at. I appreciate y'all watching, and if you like what you're seeing, y'all know the drill. Hit the subscribe button, smash the bell. If you don't like what you're seeing, hit the unsubscribe button. We're gonna keep going up. I do appreciate everybody at the STEM Academy at UTPB, all my 6th graders, 5th graders, everybody I'm teaching, you guys watching my videos and subscribing to the channel. I appreciate that. So a big shout out to STEM Academy, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade art classes. Thank you very much. We'll catch y'all on the next one.